Picture this scenario because I guarantee it has happened to you in the last 6 months. It's Saturday morning. You wake up feeling energized and ambitious. You scroll through Instagram and see another perfectly curated home renovation post. The caption says, "Easy weekend project, total cost $47. You look around your own house and think, I could do that. How hard could it be? So you drive to Home Depot with confidence. You buy some paint, some wood, maybe a new power tool you definitely need. You tell yourself this is an investment. You're adding value to your home. You're being responsible. You're saving money by not hiring a professional. For hours later, you're covered in paint that's the wrong shade. The shelf you built is crooked. You've made 3 additional trips to the hardware store. Your knuckles are bleeding. And you're Googling, how much does a handyman cost? While your spouse gives you that look. You know the look. But here's what nobody tells you. That simple weekend project didn't cost you $47. When we factor in your wasted time, the mistakes, the tools you'll use once, the materials you bought wrong, the professional you'll eventually have to hire anyway, and the opportunity cost of what you could have been doing instead, that DIY project might have actually cost you $2,000 or more. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time calculating the hidden economics of the decisions we make when we're feeling confident on a Saturday morning. If you are someone who has a garage full of half-finished projects, a closet full of tools still in their packaging, or a Pinterest board titled Someday Projects, that mocks you every time you open it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today, we aren't talking about the satisfying DIY success stories. We are talking about the financial massacre that happens when we overestimate our skills and underestimate the true cost of doing it ourselves. We are going to calculate the real cost of DIY disasters. And I have to warn you, once you see these numbers, you will never look at a YouTube tutorial titled, "Anyone Can Do This," the same way again. Here's the fundamental delusion we've all bought into thanks to social media and home improvement shows. We've been convinced that DIY projects always save money, that hiring a professional is wasteful, that if we just watch enough YouTube videos and buy the right tools, we can do anything. We see the finished product, the beautiful kitchen backsplash, the custom-built deck, the perfectly painted accent wall, and we think, that looks easy. I can do that. But what we don't see is the 47 takes it took to film that tutorial. The professional experience that makes complex tasks look simple. The expensive mistakes that ended up on the editing room floor. We see the highlight reel and compare it to our behind-the-scenes disaster. It's like watching an Olympic gymnast and thinking, yeah, I could probably do a backflip. Yet when it comes to home improvement, we somehow believe the lie that amateur hour will produce professional results. Let's perform a brutal financial autopsy of a typical DIY disaster. Let's call our protagonist Sarah. Sarah decides she wants to retile her bathroom. She watches some videos. It looks doable. A professional quoted her $1,800 for the job. That seems expensive. She thinks, I can do this myself for maybe $400 in materials. I'll save $1,400. That sounds like smart financial planning. But let's trace the actual costs. First, the materials. Sarah goes to the tile store and picks out tiles. But she doesn't know how to calculate for waste, cuts, and mistakes. She buys exactly enough tiles for the square footage. Big mistake. She gets home, starts the project, breaks several tiles during cutting, realizes she measured wrong, and now has to go back to buy more. But the store is out of that exact tile. So she either has to wait 2 weeks for a reorder or pick a different tile entirely. She picks a different tile. Now she has $200 worth of wrong tiles sitting in her garage forever. Strike one. Then there are the tools. To do this job right, Sarah needs a tile cutter, a wet saw, spacers, trowels, a grout float, a level, and about 15 other specialized items. She can't just buy the cheap versions because halfway through the project, the $15 tile cutter from the discount bin breaks, and she has to buy the $60 one anyway. By the time she has all the tools, she spent $350. And here's the kicker. She will probably never use most of these tools again. That wet saw will sit in her garage for the next decade, a $120 monument to her ambition. Strike two. Now let's talk about time. Sarah thought this would take a weekend. It takes 3 weekends. The first weekend is demolition and prep work, which is harder than it looked in the video. The second weekend is laying tile, which she has to redo twice because the spacing was off and the tiles weren't level. The third weekend is grouting and sealing, which requires waiting periods she didn't account for. That's roughly 40 hours of her life. If Sarah makes $30 an hour at her job, and we value her weekend time at the same rate, that's $1,200 worth of her time. But it's actually worse than that because this isn't relaxing hobby time. This is stressful, frustrating, physically demanding work. This is time she could have spent with her kids, working on her side business, or actually resting so she's not exhausted at her real job on Monday. Strike 3. Then there are the mistakes. Because Sarah isn't a professional, she makes errors. She doesn't waterproof correctly behind the tile. She doesn't slope the shower floor properly for drainage. She uses the wrong type of grout for a wet area. These mistakes don't show up immediately. They show up 6 months later when water damage appears, when mold starts growing, when tiles start cracking. And now she has to hire a professional anyway, not just to do the job, but to fix her mistakes first. That professional charges her $2,800 because repair work is always more expensive than new work. Strike 4, 5, and 6. Let's add it up. The wrong materials she can't return, $200. The tools she'll never use again, $350. Her time valued at her hourly wage, $1,200. The professional she eventually has to hire anyway, $2,800. The total cost of Sarah's DIY bathroom project is $4,550. She could have hired the professional from the start for $1,800. Her DIY adventure cost her an additional $2,750. She didn't save money. She lit money on fire while also ruining her weekends and damaging her home. This is the DIY disaster tax, and millions of people pay it every single year. But it gets worse because there are hidden costs we haven't even counted yet. There's the relationship tax. Sarah's partner is annoyed because the bathroom has been unusable for 3 weeks. They've been showering at the gym. The tension in the house is thick. They had a fight about whether they should have just hired someone in the first place. You can't put a price tag on domestic harmony, but its absence definitely has a cost. There's the stress tax. Sarah spent those 3 weekends stressed, frustrated, watching YouTube videos at midnight trying to figure out what went wrong. She was short-tempered at work the following weeks because she was physically exhausted. That stress has a real cost to her health and well-being. There's the opportunity cost. What else could Sarah have done with those 40 hours? She could have worked overtime and made extra money. She could have worked on the side business she keeps saying she'll start. She could have taken her kids to the park, read books, learned a skill that actually has long-term value. Instead, she spent 40 hours becoming mediocre at something she'll probably never do again. And there's the sunk cost fallacy that keeps us trapped. Once Sarah is $800 deep into this project, she can't quit. She has to finish. Even though every rational bone in her body is screaming to stop and call a professional, she keeps going because she's already invested so much. This is how bad money chases good money down the drain. The home improvement industry has become brilliant at selling us this fantasy. They've convinced us that DIY is always virtuous and hiring help is somehow shameful. Big box stores have entire marketing campaigns built around empowerment. You can do this. Be your own contractor. Take control. And look, I'm not saying all DIY is bad. If you genuinely enjoy woodworking as a hobby, if you find painting meditative, if you're actually skilled at electrical work, then by all means, do it. But we have to be brutally honest about the difference between a hobby that costs money and a project that supposedly saves money. Here's the test. Ask yourself these questions before starting any DIY project. 1. Have I successfully done this exact type of project before? Not something similar. This exact thing. If the answer is no, you're learning on your own dime in your own home. 2. Do I already own all the specialized tools required, or will I need to buy them? If you're buying tools, factor that into your cost comparison. 3. What is the worst-case scenario if I screw this up? If the answer involves water damage, electrical fires, or structural issues, maybe don't learn on the job. 4. Do I actually have the time to do this right? Or am I going to rush it and cut corners? Most DIY disasters happen because we run out of patience, not because we lack ability. And 5. What is my time actually worth? If you make $40 an hour at your job and a project will take you 20 hours, that's $800 of your time. Could a professional do it in 5 hours for $600? Then hiring them is actually the cheaper option. This is where the psychology gets interesting. We have this weird mental accounting where we don't count our own time as having value. We'll spend 30 hours to save $300 and think we won. But if someone offered us $10 an hour to do hard labor, we'd laugh at them. Yet that's exactly what we're paying ourselves when we DIY to save money. We're running a business where we're both the owner and the employee, and we're paying ourselves below minimum wage while producing substandard results. There's also the Dunning-Kruger effect in full force. This is the cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge overestimate their competence. When you've never tiled a bathroom, you don't know what you don't know. The project looks simple because you can't see the complexity. It's only once you're elbow deep in thin-set mortar that you realize there are about 47 small decisions that require experience to get right. But by then, it's too late. So what's the solution? How do we escape the DIY money pit? First, get honest about your actual skill level. There are tiers of home projects. Tier 1 is truly simple stuff like painting a room with a single color, changing light bulbs, basic cleaning, and organizing. Most people can do these without disaster. Tier 2 is intermediate projects like installing shelves, basic landscaping, simple furniture assembly. These require some skill, but the stakes are low. If you mess up, it's not catastrophic. Tier 3 is advanced projects like anything involving plumbing, electrical, tile work, or structural changes. These require real expertise, and the cost of failure is high. Be brutally honest about which tier you actually operate in. Second, calculate the true all-in cost before you start. Materials plus tools plus your time valued at your hourly wage plus a disaster buffer of at least 30%. Compare that number to professional quotes. If the DIY cost is within 20% of the professional cost, hire the professional. Your time and stress are worth that 20% premium. Third, recognize that hiring professionals is not weakness or waste. It's specialization. You wouldn't attempt to remove your own appendix just because a surgeon is expensive. You wouldn't represent yourself in court just because lawyers charge a lot. Home improvement is the same. These are skilled trades that take years to master. Paying for expertise is often the smartest financial decision you can make. Fourth, if you truly want to DIY, start small and learn properly. Take a class. Practice on projects that don't matter. Build your skills on a workbench in the garage before you start cutting into your home's walls. Treat it as a genuine learning process, not a way to save money on your first attempt. And finally, calculate your opportunity cost. Every hour you spend wrestling with a project you're not good at is an hour you're not spending on things you are good at. If you're a graphic designer who makes $50 an hour freelancing, and you spend 20 hours building a deck to save $600, you just lost $400 in potential income. You'd have been better off working those 20 hours at your actual skill and hiring a deck builder. I want you to think about the last DIY project you attempted. Be honest about how it went. Did it actually save money when you count everything? Your time, your mistakes, your stress, the tools you bought? Or did you pay the DIY disaster tax? Write down that true cost. Look at it. Feel the sting. And let that inform your next decision when you're feeling ambitious on a Saturday morning. We're living in an era where time is our most valuable asset and expertise is abundant and affordable. Don't waste your finite time pretending to be a professional in a field you'll never master. Know your strengths. Hire for your weaknesses. And remember that the most expensive home improvement project is the one you do twice. If this video made you rethink that project you've been planning, share it with a friend who has a garage full of regret. We can learn from each other's expensive mistakes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.